Yeah, it's your boy Neferkari Dessalines back in the building. Yes, indeed. And today we're going to talk about Dominicans during the Haitian Revolution. Let's talk about it, man. Now, yes, in the present day, 2022, Dominicans, yeah, they hate Haitians in the present day. And, that's cool, you know what I mean? But that's the topic for another day. But we're going to talk about Dominicans during the Haitian Revolution. We're going to talk about moments in history that never really get spoken about. We always talk about the tension and the beefs and the battles that took place, but we never talk about the positives. And I think I even did a video a few weeks ago actually titled "Why Do Dominicans Hate Haitians?" I think that's a cool video. If you want to go back, go listen to that. But I want to talk about something positive for a change. You know what I mean? I think it will be an interesting topic as well. So let's get into it. And before I even get started, I want to say that the inspiration for this video came through one of my favorite subscribers that's always in the comment section. Whenever I drop a video on a historical topic, he's always dropping information sometimes that I don't even know about. And I recently came across an excellent comment that he dropped in a recent video of mine, and it reads something like this. Saint-Domingue, Haiti, back in, the pre-colonial era, and the Captaincy General of Santo Domingo indeed traded with each other. This is why the people of Hispaniola will continue to conduct business with one another. Prior to the Haitian Revolution starting, a mulatto from Santo Domingo named Jose Campos Tavares emigrated to Saint-Domingue, Haiti, and pledged loyalty to Jean-Jacques Dessalines and Henri Christophe and became known as Baron de Tabal. Before he decided to leave Santo Domingo, Jose and his fellow comrades, which consisted of Afro-Latinos and mulattoes, fought against Haiti on behalf of Spaniard Dominicans who were loyal to Spain and slavery. Eventually, relatives of Jose Campos Tavares emigrated to Haiti and fought for Haitian freedom and joined the Haitian military and the royal court, and were loyal to Dessalines and Christophe. Jose Campos Tavares was still alive during the unification of Hispaniola in 1822. I wonder what happened to him and his family since they decided to remain in Haiti. And I want to give a shout out to the homie Abraham, always in the comment section, always dropping elite information, a lot of the stuff I know, but a lot of stuff I don't know. And I really appreciate new information, bro, because you got to understand we are inundated with false information, half truths, half lies. And when you come across a new nugget of information that was not taught to you in school, which most of this is never going to be taught to you in school, it's just, I can't even describe the feeling, man. But so as you can imagine, this made me want to go deeper into the information. So I went online and I found this. The coat of arms for Jose Tavares, who served in the court of Henri Christophe, a formerly enslaved person from Spanish Santo Domingo. Tavares initially fought against Haiti before pledging loyalty to Dessalines and Christophe. Examples such as Tavares illustrate how Haiti could appeal to people of African descent in the eastern part of the island. The royal almanacs of Christophe's kingdom also mention additional members of the military in the court with the Tabar surname, suggesting relatives of Jose Campos Tavares were additional persons with roots in Spanish Santo Domingo. Certainly one of the most important elements in the history of the foreign presence in Haiti, Dominicans can be somewhat difficult to track. Sharing an island and lacking an effective border until the 1930s, contact between the peoples on both sides of the island can be traced back to the colonial period. Trade, particularly of cattle from eastern Hispaniola, was an important export to Haiti since the colonial period. Many on the frontier also depended on access to markets in Port-au-Prince for imported goods. Of course, runaway slaves from Haiti fled across the border. Last, but certainly not least, over 20 years of political unification also led to contacts, families, and economic ties across the frontier. Of course, quantifying the number of Dominicans living in Haiti during the 19th century is difficult, although some estimate about 15,000 Dominicans currently reside in Haiti, perhaps higher, but the higher population of Haiti and demographic pressure on the land favored greater Haitian immigration into the DR than the other way around. Nonetheless, the bicultural frontier included many Dominicans who lived in Haitian territory, married Haitians, and in some cases served in the Haitian military. So basically, I was sent down the rabbit hole into a new pot of information that I never had. So honestly, this is something that I pretty much understood though, because you have to understand the people of African descent in the DR territory and the people of Haiti, we've always been one, you know what I mean? We've always been on the same team. We always had the same worldview. The root of the conflict between Haitians and Dominicans can be traced back to the early revolutionary period. Why? Because you have to understand there was always a light-skinned white European descent elite class in the Dominican territory. This has always been the case since it was founded, and this is still the case still to this day. And they were not on the same page of these, African rebels, taking up arms against their quote-unquote oppressors, relinquishing the chains of slavery. No, I don't think that they were down with that cause at all. No. The Africans on the DR territory were down with that cause. Yes, many of them, I'm sure it wasn't just Jose Tavares that made the trip and made the voyage and came through and joined the ranks. No. He was just probably the high rank elite who was part of the Haitian ruling class. So he has historical documents and artifacts that pretty much keep his name alive. But I'm sure there was hundreds and maybe thousands of Dominicans that were dying on the battlefield right next to the Haitians during the Haitian Revolution. You don't think that a black man on the Dominican side hear about what the black men doing on the Haitian side? He not trying to get over there and get it popping. A black man with that spirit in him, that warrior spirit in him, the spirit of the ancestors in him. You don't think that he would try to make his way over there? Now, of course, it was definitely something that was like, nah, I ain't trying to get into it. You know what I mean? I ain't trying to, risk my life. But you have to understand, there were definitely black men who heard what was happening on the other side, bro. Like they know, because you have to understand, if it was black men in North America, in Texas and Louisiana and Georgia, New York and Mississippi that knew about the Haitian Revolution, you don't think that the homies on the other side next door didn't hear about the Haitian Revolution, man? Come on, bro. Now you'll find that many people trace the origin of the conflict between Haitians and Dominicans back to the Parsley Massacre or the many military engagements between the DR military and the Haitian military. But truthfully, it can be traced back to the relationship between the French elite in the early colonial revolutionary period and the Spanish elite, because you have to understand, those were the men that were running the island. Those were the big chiefs on the island. You got one side, the Frenchman running his thing. He got his trap bumping. You got the other side. You got the Spanish side. He got the trap bumping. But when the Frenchman literally got ran out of town, with no pants on, the Spanish on the other side, they were still in effect. Now, of course, when the independence was declared, I believe that it was quote unquote French territory because of a treaty that was signed a few years prior. But the Spanish elite that were living there, it's not like they just packed up and left just because it was temporarily French territory. They were still doing their thing, handling their business, running their plantations. So when the Africans became the ones in power and they became the ruling class, the ruling party, you had the lower class Africans on the other side, the Dominicans, trying to get to the Africans on the other side, to get to freedom, because they knew that once I step foot on the other side of the border, I'm free. But the ruling class, they actually clicked up with the ruling class French. They got ran out, because when independence was declared, they didn't tell you that it was hundreds of French soldiers that ran over the border, ran over to the DR. And how did they manage to seek refuge? Well, number one, it was temporarily French territory due to the treaty, and the elite that were running the DR, the Spanish light-skinned white descendant elite, they pretty much came and let them come in with open arms, which triggered the quote-unquote Haitian military invasions, which, if you put it in modern terms, it's really no different than what that guy from Russia is doing on his side of the continent, invading that little piece of territory. I don't want to mess up my algorithm in my video, so I'm not going to name names, but you understand what I'm saying. Homie from Russia, the one who sent the shooters over to that other side. That is essentially what the quote-unquote Haitian invasion is classified as. But it wasn't a Haitian invasion because, like I said previously, the majority African slave population, they pretty much celebrated when the Haitians came in. You know what I mean? They were like, yo, our brothers came through, what up, gang? You know what I mean? But of course, the ruling class, the French ruling class, combined with the Spanish ruling class that were, clicking up together and trying to, keep this contained and keep this isolated, they did not like what they saw. And they began planting the original seeds of anti-Haitian propaganda through the media. Whatever media existed back then, the newspapers, whatever it was back in the early 1800s, they were the ones that planted those seeds. It wasn't because of no Parsley Massacre. It wasn't because of no military battles. It wasn't because of no quote unquote invasion, because the invasion was a matter of national security. Because you have to understand, we have enslavers on the island. We have slave ships still pulling up to the dock with people on them for sale. Still, even though Haiti is quote unquote independent, on the other side, there's literally men, women, and children still pulling up to the dock day in and day out. Like, we can see them. You know what I mean? Like, we can look to the left and we can see them. Like little 9-year-olds with no clothes on is coming off the boat, about to get sold for like, $50. So you have to understand, that is what inspired the quote unquote Haitian occupation, which was pretty much not an occupation, because it wasn't like it was a hostile takeover. The majority of the population pretty much was down with the agenda, minus the, like I said, the small ruling class European descendant elite, which of course they would never be down with the agenda. Of course, we are diametrically opposed on everything from political to social to spiritual to down to the way we see the world. And y'all probably thought that comment I dropped earlier was some fire, but nah, the homie actually came back with more fire, man. And I gotta put y'all on, man. Shout out to Abraham once again, always dropping elite knowledge, always in the comment section with the fire. My man came through and said, during the presidency of Sylvain Salnave in 1867, a large number of Hispanic immigrants from the Dominican Republic traveled west across the border into Haiti and settled in Cap Haitien, that's the north side. Before Salnave became president, he went to the Dominican president at that time and asked him to provide men that can be used to help him take over Haiti. Sylvain Salnave received 40 Dominican men in total, and he laid siege in Le Cap and made his way to the southern part of the island to take Haiti over. It was said that Haitians were said to have been reluctant to fight against Salnave and his men because Salnave was backed by Dominicans. After Sylvain Salnave assumed the presidency, more Dominicans began to settle in Cap Haitien and contributed to the economy there. There were Haitians who were involved in Dominican politics, and likewise, there were Dominicans involved in Haitian politics. Now, big up, Sylvain Salnave, one of our greatest, leaders, one of our greatest presidents, real G, you know what I mean? And listen, if you go look up his picture, just because you see, someone that's, very light skinned, very almost white passing, no, in his heart, he was an African. He was a man of the people. You know what I mean? So don't let that be the interference. When you look up Sylvain Salnave, one of our greatest. Shout out to the big homie. And he was assassinated. Unfortunately, he was assassinated. And but his family still remained among the ruling class in Haiti. I believe that his daughter actually married Antonin Furman, which is actually the author of The Equality of the Human Race, is one of the greatest books ever written in the 19th century. He actually launched the Furman Rebellion, where the German government sent warships to Haiti and blew our warship away, and our captain of the Navy died in the ship. Yeah, I definitely got to do a video on Furman's Rebellion because information on that is just so hard to come by. They wiped away so many of our legendary moments out the history books, just not just speaking about Haitians in general, but black people, black men just in general. Our man, when we let our nuts hang, when we came through and really did what we did, man, they just wiped it out the history books like it never happened. But it's your boy Neferkari Dessalines back in the building, yes indeed. And Dominicans and Haitians, man, I felt like coming with some positivity. A couple weeks ago I dropped that video, why Dominicans hate Haitians. So I feel like I come back, double back with the positivity just because of these excellent comments that I seen in the comment section. Shout out to my boy Abraham once again. It's your boy Neferkari Dessalines, and I'm gone. Peace. Hold up. How can I stop the video without acknowledging one of the legendary Haitian/Dominican ancestors that we got, man? Shout out to Charlemagne Pégual, you know what I mean? Haitian nationalist leader. When the U.S. Marines invaded in 1915, he was the head chief general that pretty much led the rebellion against the American army. He pretty much led the insurgency against the American military, and of course he was assassinated. Listen, we got to make a video on the fact that every time a legendary black man stands up and does the right thing, he gets his head knocked off his shoulders. But anyways, legendary, originally of Dominican descent. As we know, he came from a border town because the border towns has its own culture, its own Haitian Dominican culture. It's always been that way. The border towns pretty much where the people of both sides of the island mingle and pretty much have their own thing going on. Originally coming from one of the border towns, I forget which one. I believe it was Hinch. Yeah, he came from Hinch. Yeah, shout out to my people from Hinch. And he is actually the only black man in history. Yes, the only black man in history to wage war against the American military, against the American Navy, against the Marines, against the American government. The only black man to wage literal war and fight literal battles against the American military. A Haitian of Dominican descent. So I'll even give the Dominicans that. Y'all want to crack jokes on the Dominicans, and we love cracking jokes on the Dominicans. Listen, I be cracking jokes on them too, when they try to, oh, I know black papa, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But you listen, the Dominicans can say that the only black man to ever wage war against the American military, against the American U.S. Marines, was a Haitian of Dominican descent, of Dominican origin from the border region. Yes, yeah. If they want to claim that, so, they don't like to claim the blackness, you know what I mean? So they might want to claim, the elite light-skinned planters that were owning the plantations. They might take pride in that. But listen, if they want to, take pride in their blackness, they can say that we can claim to have the only black man to ever go against the U.S. machine, the U.S. Marines. They can claim that. And I'll give it to him. I'll tip my hat to that. We can both claim that together because that was our brother. You know what I mean? Both sides. You know what I mean? Family. If y'all want to be family. I know y'all hate us, man. I know y'all hate us. But, if y'all want to be family, it's all love, man. It's your boy Neferkari Dessalines, and I'm out, man.